It's your girl, your host, Jocelyn, y como siempre, I am so grateful you are here tuning into this very beautiful conversation that we're about to get into with our very special guest, Crystal Streets, who is an energetic alchemist, intuitive fine jeweler, healer, channel, ceremonialist, cosmic guide, breathwork facilitator, and spiritual coach. This is going to be a expansive and insightful and I feel heartfelt conversation on death and rebirth, on shadow work, and on what it looks and feels like to be a true alchemist. So Crystal, thank you so much for being here. I'm genuinely excited to get into this conversation with you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Thank you for that beautiful reflection and introduction. I am grateful as well to be here.
Yes. And speaking of grateful, we always start these conversations with gratitude. So I'd love for you to share with us what it is that you currently feel grateful for.
You know what? I was thinking about this because ironically this week I was prompted from my guides to give more gratitude for what I have. Because as an entrepreneur and someone who's continuously evolving, I tend to, I'm always looking to what's next. And I got a little nudge from my guides this week and they were like, can you appreciate what you have? Because your life is pretty amazing. And I was like, okay, checkmate, touche, you got me. So every day I've been this week, I have been just really getting into just aligning with what I have and dropping into what I have and everything that I have and everything that I've gotten, everything that I've experienced to get to this point. So I'm grateful for what I have right now. I'm grateful for my life, my children, my home. I'm grateful for all the things that I currently have manifested and that were dreams. They're now here in the physical form. So I'm grateful for that. That's a lot.
Definitely. And interestingly enough, I feel like even though I do practice gratitude daily and I do feel like gratefulness embodied, I actually have gotten that same or similar nudge recently of just like, because I'm also just kind of always like as a visionary and someone who is constantly evolving, as you mentioned, like I'm always kind of like very forward thinking.
Yeah.
But it really is so important for us to be grounding ourselves consistently in the present moment and like really counting our blessings and like acknowledging them. And so I'm right there with you.
Great.
And I actually want to, as I mentioned prior to this, I love the like bio, if you will, that you sent me, and love how it wasn't like in paragraph form. It was kind of like listed out. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, this kind of is feeling like an outline to this conversation, and I want to break this down and expand on it. But before we do, I want to read what it says to everyone listening.
Okay.
I love what it says, and I feel like this is going to be basically like a summary, if you will, of the kind of conversation we're gonna talk about right now. So it says, I've died more times than I can count. Some of those deaths were painful, like the abuse I experienced in my childhood. Some of them simply the closing of a chapter, like the life I left behind as a celebrity stylist working with clients like Jay-Z and Rihanna. And some of them were unimaginably beautiful, like my journey into motherhood with my 2 earth angels. With every death, I saw my life shift in ways that I could have never imagined, each shift leading me deeper into my gifts and my purpose, alchemy. I am a true alchemist using my divine feminine energy. I turn the shadows into light, pain into gold, and pressure into diamonds. I turn all things into beauty. My being is called to transform everything it touches, whether that be my energy healing clients or the fine jewelry pieces I create. I share alchemic tools and processes that truly changed my life, work that has helped me come home to myself, my body, and my freedom. As a spiritual leader, it is my mission to bring these practices to my community and clients so they can realize their truths and become the alchemists of their own divinely guided lives.
Wow.
Yeah, when I read that, I was like, okay, let's talk more about this.
Yeah.
And
Thank you for sharing.
first, yeah, thank you for sharing. Let's start with, the opening sentence, which is, I've died more times than I can count. I slightly touched on this earlier in this conversation, but being someone who just evolves so much, do you ever feel like you're experiencing so many deaths and rebirths that it's kind of hard to catch up with your own self? Because just in the past couple of years, I feel like I've experienced so many deaths and have caught myself like I need to consistently be reminding myself of who I am now, and but the renewal just continues and continues. So how has that integration been for you? Have you had those moments where you feel like you're trying to catch up with your own self and your own evolution?
I've died many times, right? And I've lived many lives, right? And prior to my awakening, I didn't know I was dying. So I think as we awaken and we step more into radical self-awareness and radical self-reflection, we are now more aware and observant that we are actually dying. I think we've been dying, right? I think we've been dying for a long time, but we didn't know it, or we didn't have the words for it. We didn't know that it was an actual death. People tend to think of death as something very scary and negative, when actually, to me, birth is not the beginning and death is not the end. And if we can look at it as like, I call it sometimes my transformational life process. It's leaving the old self to become the new one, right? To grow and become the new one. And if you are constantly evolving and growing, especially we all have been in these past 3 or 4 years, we've all been like on this like super speed of like ascension of like, awakening and realizing we were living in a veil and disconnected from ourselves. And we're all finally, a lot of us, coming home to ourselves. So I think what's happening now is that we feel it now. Like we know what's happening. My last couple of deaths, I've been complete observers. I've been in a position to not only be in it, dying, but also on the outside looking in like, oh, okay. I'm like studying the process, because now it's like, when I see the death coming on, I'm like, bring that shit on, because I know on the other side of that death, that rebirth, every single time, it never fails. I come out wiser, stronger, freer, richer, lighter, more empowered. So I think that if we could all really just embrace death and change as like us graduating, we're just simply graduating, right? We're graduating like we graduated from kindergarten, from elementary school, from high school. It's just now as adults, we're like spiritually graduating. And to me, like, that excites me because with every graduation, I get new gifts.
I feel like the topic of death and rebirth has been coming up a lot, and there may be, I'm sure there are people that are still trying to really understand that concept because, we have to kind of grow into and expand our limited perceptions. And for many, death is, like you mentioned, an ending, but also just like the physical death.
Yes.
And birth, the same thing, when we're born on our birthday, like that's our birth.
Right.
So to not necessarily define death and rebirth, but I think in asking you this question, it may bring some clarity. What's, if you're open to sharing, one of the most recent deaths that you experienced?
I had an ego death. I don't know if you've had one of those yet, but I had an ego death. It was this summer. So I'm great at a little backstory. Like I'm a powerful, powerful manifester. Like I can literally manifest anything, right? And I'm great at manifesting homes and vacations and all of that, right? So I've traveled a lot, not only through me just manifesting, but I used to be a celebrity stylist. So I've done world tours. I've been to I've been a lot of places with my clients. So I've traveled a lot and I've seen a lot. And this summer, I was going through a death and rebirth because I was having this like life review. And I was thinking about, spirit was just like from every phase of my life, from starting from like elementary school to high school, I was getting like opportunities to revisit these people, places, things that I was encountering. And I think what was happening was that I was getting an opportunity to react to them differently from this new consciousness, from this new me, right? And it was interesting because the things that were coming up and that I was seeing would have triggered the old me. But I knew that I was healed and in a whole space now because these things were re-entering my life. And I'm like completely responding to them differently. And I think that is the test to know like where you are. Like when things come up, how do you respond to them? How do you react to them? And so the test was more like me responding differently to the same experiences in the same places. Through this, one of the things was I my favorite place, I used to say my favorite place in the world is Capri, Italy. Like I wanted to get married there. Like I just was in love with this place. But I hadn't been in over almost 14 years, right? And so I kept saying this was my favorite place, but I hadn't gone back to this place in 14 years. And in the meantime, I've been traveling a lot more, and it's been more like on a spiritual, like I've been going to these beautiful spiritual vortexes like Bali and Costa Rica and Tulum pre-pandemic. It was like Hawaii, like I'm going to these places and I'm coming back having like full on light code, water code activations, coming back like brand new. Like I come back from a trip and I've gone through initiation. I got new gifts. I got gifts while I was there, like so many synchronicities. And so this summer I was like, I want to go back to Capri. And I was like, but I was so like, I wanted to show my daughter who's turning 14, who this old person was, because she just knows the spiritual me now, right? But the old Crystal, before she was born, I was a stylist. I was making a lot of money. I was very like material. Like that's what mattered to me then. Like I did wardrobe for a living. So everything that was around me was very materialistic based. And I realized, so I wanted to go back here because I was like, I want to show her who I was then and how I used to go here and just like kill it and go on this. And I was like, you know what? And then I started to feel guilty. Like, well, Krista, you haven't done one of those trips in a long time. Are you sure? Like, I'm going back and forth. My higher self is like, are you sure that's what you want? And I'm like, well, why can't I bridge my new 5D consciousness with my old 3D wealth? Like, so I was like, I'm gonna make this an experiment. Like, I'm gonna see if I can take the new me and go back into the old world and enjoy those things that I used to enjoy. Not that I don't enjoy material things. It's just not my focus anymore. It doesn't, I could really care less. Like I've seen so many clothes and red carpets and runways. Like I never have to watch an award show again. Like I don't even go into stores to shop. So it's completely not my personality or anything that I value. I value luxury pieces, but it's quality pieces. It's things that I collect and that are timeless. But all of that excess, I'm not here for it. Right. So I'm like telling everybody like, okay, I'm going to go to Capri to have this experience to see. And I get there and literally I stepped in some 3D shit. Right? Immediately, I could tell that this place was not resonating with who I was anymore. Like it did nothing for me. Like to the point where I was so out of alignment that I caught a parasite. An entity jumped into my body and I caught COVID on the way home and I got stuck in Paris because they canceled my flight about 4 times. And I was like, whoa. And I spent all this money on this trip, right? Because I was like, this is an experiment. I'm justifying this money. Like probably the most I've spent on a trip, on a vacation ever, I spent on this trip. And I kept justifying it. Like, I can still do these things. Like, why not? But what I realized was every single reason that why I wanted to go to Capri was ego-based, was me trying to prove something to my old self, to my daughter, to my new self. And it was like, Spirit was like, you really, that's what you want? Okay, I'm gonna give you what you want. And normally I would meet like on my trips, I meet different people from all over the world who are aligned with me. I swear I was meeting people and the conversation was so like dead that I was like, I was literally bored in Italy. And I ate way too much, but I was bored, but I was like ready to go by the time, like by a few days before my trip was up, I was ready to go because it just, nothing was resonating. So that was my latest death and rebirth. And because of that situation, when I got back to the States, I had COVID, an entity, and a parasite all at the same time. And I'm very healthy. I take care of myself. I take a lot of supplements. I don't know if you've ever experienced having an entity jump into your body. That's a whole nother conversation. But even getting a parasite alone, like I couldn't keep food down for over a month. And I had COVID. So everything that I was taking to get better from COVID, I couldn't even keep it down. And I was literally laying in my bed at times and it was like my thoughts weren't my thoughts. And what I realized is that these parasites have negative energy that they really just like it. When these things enter your body that don't belong there, that they can really like modify your thoughts and your energy. Like I didn't feel like myself at all. And I was like, wow. So I paid the price, the consequences of being out of alignment, of doing something based in ego and not based in my values and my spirituality and my truth and things that I know that are going to expand me. This was purely based on ego. And I took a big lesson. I didn't even work for almost 2 months after that because I was so sick. And that was the biggest death and rebirth this year. I had a couple more that were pretty that are second up to that one, but that was the latest.
Yeah. Well, I feel like Spirit was like, you're going to learn.
Yes.
You're going to learn. Yes. And something that I feel called to bring up, because when you started sharing this, is you brought up how, kind of like reflections of past experiences were kind of like circling back with you. And something that I realized was that, so we all experience that, life is cyclical. But so many of us have the perception that when we experience something similar from our past, it's like, oh, I thought I healed this.
Right.
I didn't do all the healing that I thought I did. But I think it's important to kind of shift our perspective in a way and not kind of fall into that spiral of, oh, I thought I healed this. There's more healing I need to do. And shifting it into the perspective of, oh, I'm getting the opportunity to respond to this differently. I'm getting the opportunity to exercise my healing and see how much I actually have healed, So I just had to bring that up.
Yeah. And I was going to say that too. It's an opportunity for you to see how far you've come. Mm-hmm. Just like you said, to respond differently, but also like Spirit was just showing me like, look how far you've come. You're nowhere near that, who that person was 14 years ago. Look how far you've come. That whole life review was just basically, look how far you've come. And that sometimes just is the message, like to acknowledge where you are in this present moment and how far you've come.
Yes. And I love also how you brought up that these are like graduations, because I experienced a death through the past couple of years that was a death of an identity, which I'm going to touch on with you as a stylist. But it was hard for me to let go because it was such a huge part of my life. But when I saw it as I completed my mission, it's time to close this cycle and I can feel it, and I've graduated from that and it's time to move on to the next mission. It's time to move on to the next cycle. That helped me move on a lot because I realized I said yes to this when it came. I did my best. I spent a lot of my time and energy here, but I've graduated and it's time to move on to the next thing. I've completed my mission. The next thing you mentioned was that some of the deaths you experienced were painful, like the abuse you experienced in childhood. This may feel a bit heavy, but what aspects of you died when you were experiencing that abuse in your childhood?
It doesn't feel heavy for me anymore because it's really just not who I am, and it doesn't define me. So it was a part of my shadow. Our shadows are those most shameful, embarrassing, ugliest part of ourselves that we don't want anyone to know, right? And so my abuse was my shadow for almost my whole adult life. But what my abuse did for me, how it changed my identity is I literally left my body. I was disconnected from my soul. My spirit left my body at a very young age, and it didn't return until about 5 years ago. That's when I came home to myself. So basically, the abuse that I experienced, it just felt too painful to be in my body. It felt too painful. And I've always been spiritual, even as a child, and very empathic. So the upper parts of my energy centers has always been connected to source. So I've always kind of been head in the clouds. I'm a Pisces too, so I'm very dreamy. I'm a Cancer moon, so I'm all water, and I'm a Gemini rising, so all air, water. So I've always been connected spiritually to source, but I was never in my body. It felt too painful to be in my body, and I was completely disconnected. And it wasn't until I healed all of the abuse and made peace with it, and made peace with my abusers, and accepted those parts of me. I had to accept, like, I don't comply. I'm not happy about what happened to me, but it is my story. It is what it is. And I accept that it happened to me, because to me, acceptance gives you like the freedom almost to move on from it. Because it's like, once you accept something, it just is, it's clear. It is what it is. And so once I accepted that happened to me, but it didn't define me, and I began to just make complete peace with my past, I started to create a new home inside of myself. And that new home, I started to not look outside of myself for anything, because I realized everything that I needed was within. And so in this new home, I created peace, security, happiness, validation. And then I brought all of those versions of me that were abused, all the versions of me that died, I brought them back home to a new safe space, to this new home. So when that happened, I swear that's when my life really just turned around, when I really just came home back into my body, back into myself, back to myself. That's when my life really just turned around.
Let's take a moment, let's take a breather and talk about our partner, Athletic Greens, who I'm so grateful for, because they introduced me to one of your girl's absolute favorite health and wellness products called AG1. I take 1 scoop of AG1 every single morning when I get home from the gym and before I have breakfast. And I'm telling you, it's been a game changer. So what is AG1? With 1 scoop of AG1, you are absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source ingredients, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. And I'm telling you right now, it absolutely helps you start your day right. I can feel the difference in my gut health, my nervous system, immune system, my energy, recovery after the gym, my focus throughout the day. I don't know about aging yet, but your girl feels young and energized. And I don't doubt that AG1 has something to do with that. And I love that it is lifestyle friendly. So whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, gluten-free, it is friendly for your lifestyle of choice. And it contains less than 1 gram of sugar, has no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, which we love. And also, it costs you less than $3 a day. Okay. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than buying all these different pills and supplements. And you're literally getting all the goods in 1 scoop of AG1. Y'all, I would not be recommending it. I would not be promoting it. I would not be partnering with Athletic Greens if I didn't absolutely love it and believe in it and feel excited and grateful to share it with you. So community, right now, it is time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And yes, it does taste good, even if you're just putting a scoop in a cup of water. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/SWG. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/SWG to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. I have left a link in the description below. Now let's get back to this beautiful conversation with Crystal. I'm curious to ask, when you say you returned home to yourself, what does that look like to come back home to you? And how do you know when you're not home?
Good question. How do you know when you're not home? You feel you're in survival mode. You feel completely disconnected and disassociated with yourself, with your emotions, with your feelings, with your body parts. It's almost like you're numb. It's almost like you're so disassociated that it's like nothing can really, you're so numb and out of body that nothing phases you. Like, it was like I was a zombie almost. Like I was having these amazing high moments and really, really low moments, but neither one of them, both of them felt the same. If you can imagine that. Like, I was so numb and disassociated with my emotions and so like turned off with this whole armor around me that you just feel disconnected. You don't feel in tune. You don't feel like connected to your emotions, to your body, to your intuition. You're not there. Hope that explains not being in the body. Yes. And when I came home to myself, it was literally, and this is why I became a healer. I had been doing all kinds of talk therapy for a very long time. And I realized, and I was brought up in the church, so I was brought up in a very religious environment. But what I realized was with those two things that I had when I was growing up, because none of this was available, none of these new modalities, these spiritual tools, they were not available when I was growing up. So I had to rely on like the church, praying. My family would be, my mother would be like, pray. And I'm like, okay, but there has to be more. I honor prayer, but there has to be more to this. And the thought of like me going to church, trying to disconnect to spirit, God, divine, through someone else, it never resonated with my soul. So I was thinking about that. And then I was thinking about talk therapy also. It just kind of like grazed the surface. It grazed the surface. It was never deep enough for me. I never left there like feeling empowered or like I was going to really change. And what I realized with therapy is that the things that need to change on a deeper level are rooted in our subconscious. They're in the roots. These are like weeds, but we keep just skimming the surface. And what I realized was that I needed to go deeper. I needed to go down into the subconscious. I needed to pull up the trauma from the roots. And I was like, I kept asking, like, Spirit, guide me to who can help me with this. And this kind of ignited my awakening. I found someone, and she happened to be a woman of color. So that was very expansive for me. And I was like, wow. She facilitated introduced me to breath work and energy healing. And this particular session that I have with her, she's now my teacher, my closest friend. Her name is Milana Snow. I did my first session with her, and literally I broke generational curses. Literally, it was like 10 years of therapy in one session. The breath work, the transformational breath work that we facilitate has the power of plant medicine. We all have our natural DMT in our own body, the ability to go down. We can all go down and be our own healers. We can all use our breath. Go within, close our eyes and meditate and heal ourselves, right? And when I found that out and she facilitated this energy healing breathwork combination on me, I literally came home to myself. In that one session, we cleared out all the cobwebs, all the weeds, and I came home. It finally felt safe to bring my inner child, my present whole self, my higher self, and all those renditions of me. It felt amazing to just come back home to my body. And what that felt like I felt rooted. I felt grounded. I felt safe. I felt secure. I felt at peace. My nervous system was regulated. I started to look younger. Like any little physical health ailment cleared, anything. Like I am so healthy now. And it's because the inside of me, the inner and the out, is reflective of each other. And it's clear.
Yes, yes. And when you were first describing, like, what does it look like to not be home? Mm-hmm. One of the first things you mentioned is that you're kind of like numb, just like not feeling. And I've been realizing just how powerful it is to heal our relationship with our bodies. And we don't realize just how much that is interconnected with our spiritual work.
Yeah.
And, on the other side of that, being home within oneself is, one way that you are home is when you feel safe enough to feel. And you feel safe within your own energy to revisit the traumas, to do the shadow work, to do all these things. But there is no feeling without being in your body to do so, because our feelings come through the body. Yes. So we have to do that healing with our body, with our relationship with our body. So I just had to bring that up because we can't underestimate just how powerful it is for us to become intimate with our bodies again.
Yeah. And the body gives us messages. Like the body, like another thing, like sometimes I get on my right hip flexor. I've been having this pain in my right hip flexor since my son was born. And it was just a constant nagging. Like if I sat too long, if I walk too much, it would just start to aggravate. And I kept like trying to figure out what it was. And I kept asking, and I went to a few doctors, couldn't figure it out. Finally, I dropped down and started to do some self-healing. And basically, I realized that it was father energy. And each side of your body is connected to your parental side. So your left side is the female mother side. The right side is the masculine father side. So things coming up on the left side of the body are usually related to trauma or things that you are still healing. Or not, or it could be a message. And the right side is usually directed to things like you're dealing with paternal masculine energy. And I've had a lot of toxic masculine energy in my life since I was born, right? And so I'm thinking this pain in my right hip flexor was a bad thing. And I realized it was just a message. Pain is just a message. Sometimes pain is just a message. And the message for me was that it was a reminder of the unconditional father love that I was receiving. And my biological father and I didn't grow up with him for a big portion of my life. And we had a really strained relationship. But I remember he passed in 2019 in December. And I remember the night before I got the pain in my hip flexor. And I found out the next morning. And so if we could start to even change our perspective as pain being bad and looking at it as like, it's just a message. And there's so much trauma and stuck energy stored in the body. And pain and these physical manifestations is just energy that needed to be released, stored, stuck energy that is just sitting in the energy centers, stuck. And sometimes this manifests as physical pain. The reason why you see like an old couple who passes away, one passes first and the other passes like right behind them is because they die of a broken heart. That's real. Grief, unforgiveness sits in the heart. That can manifest as breast cancer. So our bodies are so intelligent, right? And if we can connect the spiritual and the energetic body to the physical body, then we could really, really understand ourselves on a deeper level. And I say that because normally, and I tell my clients this all the time, when you finish a session with me, I say you have 21 days of integration, because what we just cleared and healed and worked through on an energetic and spiritual level, it takes the body physical time to catch up with. That's why you may have this radical, intense healing energetically, but then the next days after, you may throw up. Your skin may break out. You may have lucid dreams. You may be tired. You may need to replenish. Sometimes when I have these initiations and activations, I'm starving. After I do my sessions with clients, I had a client yesterday. I left there and I was like, I wanted to just eat everything because I had to refuel and recharge my physical body because I just exerted so much energy out. We don't even understand how much the body holds.
And just how intelligent the body is.
Yes.
Yes. I love that we're touching on this because not only is it important to connect with our bodies, to sincerely be at home with ourselves and to feel and to heal, but also tuning into our intuition and like listening to the body and understanding that, you know, if we have like a kidney pain, it's not just because the kidney isn't functioning. If anything, the kidney is functioning so well that it's communicating with you and letting you know that there's something deeper taking place. And I just want to like acknowledge that so much of what is coming up in this conversation is from the perspective of an alchemist. And these are perspectives to be mindful of. Like, for example, you know, the perspective of when there's pain in the body, it's actually something deeper to learn from about yourself. When the past is revisiting you, that's an opportunity to see how far you've come along.
Yes.
Just, keeping in mind like these shifts in perspective that are actually empowering for you. Like those are the perspectives of the alchemist. So I just wanted to highlight that so that as we continue in conversation, people can kind of look out for that. But yeah, I have a whole story about my kidney stones, which completely awakened me to like my body, the power of the body, and the importance of understanding the body as a communicator.
Mm-hmm.
And all I'll say is that the reason why I got kidney stones is not because something in my body wasn't functioning properly, but because I was in an incredibly toxic relationship that was creating a lot of stress and buildup in my body.
And your kidney stones are in your sacral or your root chakra area, which represents, the root chakra is all about safety, getting your basic needs met, feeling like you belong in a community or you belong in a family or a tribe, feeling secure, having shelter, food, like your basic needs met, and being safe and stress-free is a basic need.
Yes. And all of that was completely unhealthy and detrimented in that relationship. So learning all of this, really brought me so much clarity. And it's also, something that has been passed down because my parents and grandparents have experienced kidney stones. And so you realize this when you're like really committed and devoted to your healing and spiritual and awakening journey. Is like you just realize how deep everything is.
It is. And I would encourage you to, thank you for sharing that, because I would encourage you to, like, you have the ability right now to break this generational curse that's in your family of kidney stones. You don't have to pass that down to your offsprings, to your children.
Absolutely.
You can heal these codes. You can heal this DNA inside of your body now, so that as it goes, and that's the beauty of what we're doing, right? When you take the initiative and take the steps and the courage to heal yourselves, you're healing 7 generations back and forward. So kudos and congratulations to you, because that's a big deal. And if you could move this forward, see this through to future generations in your family, like, no, the buck stops here. Every generation in my family had been sexually abused. And I said, oh, the buck stops here. My kids are not going to be sexually abused. The buck is stopping here. And so that has been my mission here. That was one of my lessons. That's one of my soul contracts, is to break the generational curse of sexual abuse in the women in my family. I was like, that's not happening anymore. And I did it. So we're living through some really like powerful times, because we have the ability to change the future generation and bring them into a world that's way more healthy. Like, I look at my son who's 5 years old, and he has the opportunity to live a life free of the heavy trauma that I experienced, with tools. Like, he's been meditating since he's been born. So I think about that. Like, my kids, they are all already authentically themselves. They get to grow up being who they are and being celebrated for who they are, and not being changed or try to be changed or tell them they're not good enough, or no, don't do this because you should do this. No, you get to be exactly who you are. And that to me is powerful. That to me is beautiful. Right?
Absolutely. And I just feel called to like point out and share that, your ego wanted to take your daughter to Italy, because the ego was like, let's show your daughter like how successful you were. This is where you were, like around materialism, all this. But Spirit was like, see how far you've come. What you're actually gifting your children is the healing of these generational cycles that have come to an end through you. And now you're gifting them not this materialistic life, but one that's full, the one where they feel at home with themselves, and that's success.
Thank you. I received that reflection. Thank you. Yeah. And guess what? My daughter didn't even give a shit about anything. That was the funniest part of it. Like, I'm like, let's do a mini do a yacht for the day for your birthday. And she's like, whatever. It was all my shit, my stuff, my projections, my things. So yes, thank you for that reflection and that reminder.
Mm-hmm.
Never make that mistake again.
Yes. And even though it was tough, it was meant to happen so that you can like really integrate the growth and the lesson and the moving forward.
And I don't know if you you use astrocartography. I don't know if you know what that is.
I literally just recently looked into that with a friend and seeing, Yeah,
well, just astrocartography really quickly is where your planets of your chart meet up in every coordinate all over the world. So when I went back to look at what my coordinates were in in Italy, in Capri, it was Saturn.
Wow.
Saturn is disciplined father energy, like the lesson. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, okay, got it.
Sometimes Saturn will come with the tough lessons too.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. There's literally so much that I can break down with you just through these breakdowns of what you're sharing. But let's get into you leaving behind being a celebrity stylist and working with clients like Jay-Z and Rihanna. This definitely touches on the ego death because I'm sure that people listening can relate to feeling like it's time to allow an aspect of their lives to end, even if it's something that is glamorous and successful and is everything that you wanted at one point, but it's time for it to go through the death and it's time for you to transition into something new. So briefly, if you could tell us a bit about that transition and how you knew that that aspect of your life needed to die.
Yeah, it was actually my Saturn return too. When I look back at it, I started styling right out of college, like 20. I moved to I graduated on a Wednesday. I knew I wanted to be a stylist in college, so I was already working to secure something once I graduated. I graduated on a Wednesday, moved to New York on a Friday. Quickly, I secured an internship at Essence magazine where I started to assist the fashion director. She started to give me like all her side styling jobs. I was able to like build my Rolodex of showrooms and fashion houses. And then I got my first big client, which was Jay-Z. And I was like 21 years old. And the big test was that this is back when he was like wearing exclusive jerseys, right? And he was like, you got to get me, you can work with me, but you got to get me this signed exclusive Michael Jordan jersey. I want to wear it to the MTV Awards. And I was like how am I going to get this? But somehow I got a hold of Michael Jordan's team. I got the request through. And at the last hour, I came through with this signed Michael Jordan jersey, right? And Jay-Z began as like my first client, my first big client, but he was also my big brother, my mentor. He taught me the game. He taught me the business side of styling. I didn't even know how to do an invoice when I started working with him. So from there, I started to style. I mean, when I tell you, it was like everybody kind of jumped on the bandwagon after I started working with him. And that's kind of how the industry is. Like once someone validates you or confirms you, they kind of just want you, right? And so my career took off very fast. Like I started doing world tours, award shows, commercials, videos, movies, like all genres of music, Hollywood actors, musicians. And I made a lot of money at a very early age, a lot of money. And I was living in New York City. I was like living a dream life. I was traveling the world. I had all the clothing access to me, like fashion houses would gift me things. Like I really lived a very fluffy life. Like it was almost, it wasn't real because I was always working. All of my expenses were paid for. All my travel was paid for. Like it was just a really good way to start off in life. But it came with the the price tag of my time. And I did this for over 10 years. And by the time I was like 29, I was like, yeah, I'm kind of tired of chasing this life. And I loved the art of styling, but I did not love the industry. The industry did not resonate with my soul. It like sucked everything out of me and went against everything that I believed in and valued. And so I got to the point where, and this probably was my first big death, where I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is like, this does not resonate. And I don't care how much money I'm making. Like my agent, everybody was looking at me like, what? You want to do what? And I was like, yeah, I can't. And I had just gotten pregnant with my daughter. And I was like, I don't want to be on a flight every 3 days. I don't want to do this. And the more and more I said I didn't want to do this, I kept getting those dangling carrots like, okay, will you do Usher's world tour? And I would be like, how can I not do Usher's world tour? So I would be like, one last job. I'll do one last job. And I started to develop on the side. I started to think about like what I wanted to do next. I knew that I no longer wanted to be in the service business. I wanted to be in the product business. I wanted to be able to make money while I was sleeping, and it didn't rely so much on all of my time, right? And so I was like, I'm going to launch this during Fashion Week. And if it takes off, I'm out of here. And once I said that, the universe kept sending me like the dangling carrot. And I swear to you, every time I took the dangling carrot, I landed in some shit. Like the job would be super hard. Everything would go wrong. I would end up losing money. I would get into stuff with the management. It was like disaster. And to me, that started to show me like the signs of when something isn't for you anymore, when it's no longer aligned, the universe, the divine will send you signs. And if you keep forcing it, it's going to get harder and harder. And that's what happened to me. It kept like, I kept taking these dangling carrots. They were like, do you want to dress Miss Patti LaBelle for Good Morning America? And I'm like, who turns down Patti LaBelle? Like, she's legendary, iconic. And so I would take them, but I would feel like shit afterwards. Even, and it wasn't Miss Patty, but it was like, I didn't want to do it. And when you do things that you do not want to do, especially me as a generator, I'm human design generator. I'm supposed to be doing things that only light me up. And so I was still doing something that just, it repulsed me at that point. And because of that, it became harder and harder. And once I finally said, I'm done and I'm moving on, and I don't care what's next, you know, I was in a space where I had a lot of resources because I made great money and I saved a lot. So I did have a fund, like a FU fund, to kind of say, okay, I've saved this, I've managed my money, I did well with my money. I'm going to use this as my bridge to invest in my business and to hold me over until I'm in the next thing. And so I would just say to you, like, to your listeners, you know when it's time. And the sooner that you follow your intuition and you follow your gut and you stand in your truth, I guarantee you, every time I jumped, the divine caught me and met me halfway. So I just want to encourage everyone who is wanting to leave something, but feeling like how or why. You can't worry about the how or the why. You have to just trust that if this is your calling, if this is your purpose, if it feels aligned and if it resonates with every bit of your body, the universe will provide a way for you.
Yes. Yes. And it really does take so much trust to leave behind a life and take the leap into the unknown.
But the unknown is where the magic is, baby.
It really is.
It's the most uncomfortable place, but it's, if you could even like start now, like what I do now is like when there's an unknown, that when there's a void, I start to get excited about it. I add another elevated emotion to it. Like, okay, I'm gonna get excited about this uncomfortable little, I don't know what's going to happen. And I just say, wow me, spirit, like show me what, like, why can't you challenge the universe? Like, show me what you got. That's what I say sometimes. I'm like, I showed you, so now you show me what you got.
Yes. And that's also like the alchemist spirit and perspective, which you brought up at the very beginning of this conversation, where you were like, now when I'm going through a death, I'm low-key excited about it because every time I've gone through a death, the rebirth has been incredible.
Yes. And I think that if we could step outside of the moment of like feeling like you don't know what's going to happen next, and if you could just envision the highest possible outcome and understand that this is how you know. Like for me, this is how I know when a manifestation comes in. It's more than what I wanted and everything that I didn't know my soul needed. That's how I know my manifestation came in. That's how I know sometimes we're playing small. Even the things that we want, our small little minds, even that, like I plant the seed, but I say, spirit, whatever you have aligned for me, I know is bigger and better than anything that I could have ever imagined. So this is my seed. Take it and do as you will with it, because I know that I can't even come up. And that's how you know too, like when these manifestations come in, these intentions come in, it's never how you anticipated it. It's always this beautiful, uncanny surprise. It's never like, oh, and then just like I wrote in my journal, I went on vacation, and when I was at the airport checkout line, I turned around and he said hi, and no, it did not happen like that. It's you fell on your face outside and was embarrassed and stayed in your hotel room for a day, and when you finally got yourself back together, you came out, and when you went to go look for Band-Aids, there he was.
Yes. And what's coming up for me is like, we have to allow ourselves to be pleasantly surprised, right? Yes. Because I feel like one of the reasons why the unknown is so difficult for us is because we're so programmed to think of the worst case scenario.
Yes.
So that's why we cling to the known and the familiar, because it feels comfortable and it's safe, and the unknown is scary because I don't know what's going to happen. And we start thinking of the worst case scenario, but it's like, it really is a practice, but like the reprogramming of like allowing ourselves to be pleasantly surprised with the unknown. And it's like, well, what if actually, like, what's the best possible thing that can happen from this?
Yes.
Yes.
Because too, it's like, not even the best possible. It's like, if we could even just lean into like, I'm missing something here. I haven't included, I don't even have the capacity to include everything that I know this could be. So giving those like those little openings, like not completely sealing and having this needs to look like this, and this, but saying, this is what I desire here. Mm-hmm. I surrender it to you. Take it and do as you will. Releasing the control, surrendering, trusting, knowing. And the knowing right? And 9 times out of 10, what I find too is that, especially when you're working on like big manifestations that you really have challenges with in your life. Like we all are challenged with something in our life that doesn't manifest as easily, right? I find that in those situations, when you're calling something in completely new of what you've experienced in the past, what tends to show up first is an echo of the past. So what's crazy is it will come in and it will look like what you already experienced, and you get confused like, what is this? But really what it is, it's the universe saying, hey, I'm going to show you your past one more time to see how you react to it, to see if you react to it the same or from this new consciousness, this new version of yourself. Are you different now? Because this little thing that's been bothering you all your life, this will tell us for sure. We're going to throw this in there to see if you're really different and you can handle this next thing that we're calling in for you. So people often give up when they see a remnant or an echo of their past. But what it really is, it's like the last big test to your manifestation. That means if the thing is here, it's like your manifestation is behind it, hiding, and you can't see it. So if you can just get past this test, right here is the gold. But most people give up right here because they say, it didn't work. The work I've been doing hasn't worked. No. If you can trust beyond, without a shadow of a doubt, that regardless of what challenge, regardless of what comes up on the path of you manifesting this thing, you know that it's going to come to you. So even if it's a challenge, the challenge is there to put you more in alignment. The challenge is there to show you, you got some more work to do here. So you may not even be ready for this because you just responded to your past the same way. So you got to go back and do some more work. How crazy is that?
Yes, really though. And two things. When you were talking about it's not even just thinking of the best possible outcome. I like that you brought that up because sometimes when we are specific about our desires and what we want to manifest, we are still limiting ourselves by placing such specific details to our desires and then expecting that. Right. I think there's so much power in acknowledging that we do have a limited perception, regardless of where we are in vibration and frequency. We're still going to have a limited perception and scope of imagination. And two, this is what I've realized, like we are being prepared. We are being matured because we have to be checking ourselves and keeping it real with ourselves by asking, okay, this is what my desire is, but am I actually open to receive it when it comes?
Yeah.
Am I actually able to sustain it when it arrives and have a longevity with it? Like can I actually handle it? Like can I actually handle my desires? And when they say, all the universe is conspiring in your favor and you feel like it isn't, like all these challenges are rising, it's like, actually it is conspiring in your favor, partly because it's helping mature you to be able to receive, to be able to handle what it is that you want.
Yes. I experienced something similar to that. What you're explaining, I'm one of the houses that I manifested. This was like my first time manifesting like a house bigger than I normally stay in. It had a pool and a guest house and like rooms I never experienced before. And I remember finally getting the house, right? But before I manifested it, there was a period where I was kind of homeless. So my intention was to figure out what neighborhood I wanted to live in. So I was going to try staying in Airbnbs in like 3 different neighborhoods. And then the pandemic hit. And I was like, like it's a pandemic and I'm homeless, right? And the woman's house that I was renting, she had children who were in college, and she was like, Crystal, I love you, but my college students are homeless. Like, I need my home back. If I find you something else, can you? But it was in me renting her home. And then the next home she found me, had a pool. I'm from the East Coast. We didn't grow up with pools in our house. And then I was like, oh, this is what pool life is like. So I realized, like, oh, now this is a must have for me. This is a deal breaker. Like, I want a pool. But then I realized, oh, with these houses, like, you have to have housekeeping weekly. Your light bill and your water bill is like a whole freaking rent when you have a pool. So I was like, I had to adjust to those things. And I don't think if I had all of those little smaller homes happen to me, that I didn't get in a position where I was homeless during the pandemic, that I wouldn't have been prepared to receive the bigger home that I was calling in. So that's a perfect example. If you don't know, like, sometimes when we're reaching and when we think we want something, but what comes along with it, you definitely, if you've never experienced it or even had the opportunity for it to be modeled to you in your childhood, you have no idea what it takes. So you may need to test it out first. You may not even want it after that.
Mm-hmm. I feel like life really is like just a constant experience of like it offering us like the ability to learn what it is that we do want, what we don't want, what we do want, what we don't want, what we do want. And it's so important that we allow ourselves to actually learn from that.
Yes.
And it's so true that, you know, our perception of what's possible for us and what it is that we desire is only so limited to what we've experienced in the past.
Yes.
So it's so important that we're investing time and energy into expanding our perception and our experiences by like learning new things, surrounding ourselves with new people, being in a different environments, trying new things, exploring new hobbies, etc., so that we can do this exploration. Like when people have asked me in the past, like, how do I know what my purpose is or what my passions are? It's like, you have to explore. Like there's no other way you're going to discover unless you do some exploration.
I would say too, not only do you have to explore outside of yourself, you have to explore in that shadow. Because 99% of the time, your purpose lies in your shadow. Your purpose lies in that part of you that you are most ashamed about. Because that part of you that you have experienced the most like trauma or heaviness behind, like those traumatic experiences that sit in the shadow, the things that we repress, suppress, reject, the parts of ourselves, right, that we're ashamed about, the parts of ourselves that we are embarrassed or we would never share with anyone. Those parts are actually where our power is. Like that pain, that light, it's like once the light can enter into those traumatic experiences, it can really almost eradicate your purpose. Because in those things that you're most ashamed about, right? If you can turn that into your power, you have the ability to help and heal so many other people. And you have your purpose is so unique. Your trials, your tribulations, your challenges are so unique to you. So if you can really alchemize those things, transmute them, your purpose, I almost guarantee, if you haven't found your purpose yet, it's in your shadow. But you got to be willing to go down into the deep, dark shadows and face, and that takes a lot of courage. But if you do, on the other side of that is blessings.
Yes. I'm so glad that you clarified that, like not just exploration outside of you, but exploration inside of you is really so important. Um, okay.
Yeah.
there's just so much that I could expand on with you. But before we get into the last bit, which I want to talk about your favorite tools for alchemy. For me, it's one of them is gratitude. But before we get into that, I want to talk about motherhood. Here you mentioned that, you know, some of your deaths have been unimaginably beautiful, like your journey into motherhood with your two earth angels.
Yeah.
What, from a spiritual perspective, what about motherhood do you feel doesn't get talked about enough? And like the transition into motherhood? Because there's definitely a death and rebirth process that takes place there too.
For sure. That's when I noticed too. It was like when I left styling and I had my daughter, that's when I really had a complete death of my identity. And going into pregnancy, I realized that I knew that I've always been very independent, right? And I knew that I didn't want to lose myself. I didn't want to lose me in motherhood, right? I wanted to keep parts of me, right? And so in doing that, I tried my best to set up my scenario. Like, I'm going to have help so that I can go and do the things that I need to do to remain crystal, like that lights me up. Like if I want to go do yoga, if I want to go have lunch with my friends, if I want to go work for 2 hours, whatever it is, like I want to have a support system in place that I can explore that. And so when I had my daughter, I'm now exiting my 10-year styling career. I'm starting my jewelry collection, which I birthed them at the same time. Her, my daughter Lyra, and my collection at the time was Lyra Love Star. And so I birthed these two things. And what I realized in that whole process was like, when I gave birth to her, I literally lost my identity. Like I did not know who I was. And it took me a minute. And this is what a lot of women talk about postpartum. And now that I've been through the process twice now, I'm not sure it's even postpartum. I'm just thinking that we lose who we are. We lose our identity. And if you're not aware of what's happening, that could be very triggering for someone. To go to like be one person and then on the other side of a birth of another human, you're not the same person. And I could imagine how that, even if a man had to experience that, what if as a man, he had a child and his career no longer resonated with him? And as a man, men, you know, sometimes their careers are their identities. Imagine that if they lost their identities through birth. So as a woman, here I am, I'm not, I don't even know who I am. I'm sitting in this space of like, I go and I cut my hair off. I dye it blonde. I'm looking in a mirror. I don't recognize my body. I don't recognize myself. I lost a lot of women gain weight. I was nursing, so I lost a lot of weight after pregnancy. I didn't feel like myself. And I was just like, who are you? Who are you? And it took just like, and back then I was not awakened. So I really struggled. It took me like almost a good 8 years to find myself again. To really like root into this new version of me, who I am now, like it was hard. And with my son, I will say it was a little bit easier because I was in an awakened state and I was way more intentional about everything. And so for that process, I definitely had a rebirth. And it was hard. It was like I hit a couple of rock bottoms, like few rock bottoms. And I wish that there was more support for women as they give birth, because in my culture, in Africa, a village raises a child. That's not even like perpetuated anymore. Like we have these little macro families of just the husband and the wife, and sometimes single parent and the child, and you got a babysitter or a nanny and school. That's your support. Because what if you live in a city where you don't have relatives? And that's how children weren't meant to come into this world like that. And women weren't meant to have all of that responsibility on them. A woman, a new mother should be nourished by the village too, not just the baby. The mom needs a whole village nourishing her too, back to life. She should have quiet time. She should be able to rest, to restore, to heal her body. But instead, she's expected to be nursing someone in the middle of the night, can't see straight, can't think straight, and go cook your own food, and go back to work in a couple of weeks. That's not right. So I think if there were initiatives in place that helped us embrace this new identity, it would be an easier transition. But I can guarantee you, ask any mom out there, did you change? I can guarantee you every single woman changes after she gives birth. We are the creators. We give birth to men. We are first. We are the goal. And a woman, what we don't know is understand the power of our womb. If we can create the biggest blessings on earth, which are children, we can create that. Why isn't that we don't know that we can create whatever else that we want? That is gold. Our womb is gold. And the moment that we can understand that and tap into that divine feminine energy, wow. You want to talk about power? That is your power. Your womb is your power.
I like got a little emotional with everything that you shared. Thank you for sharing all that. And women, I mean, humans with ovaries are just so powerful.
Yeah.
And yes, I have to ask, for those who are, I mean, you kind of touched on how you approached your second pregnancy different than the first, but and in the first you weren't awakened, you mentioned. What would you have done differently? And this is kind of serving as like some words of advice for those who are experiencing pregnancy, planning pregnancy, and are, going to go through this transformation of becoming someone completely new after birthing.
Yeah, I would say definitely do it when you are ready, not on anybody else's timetable. I had a whole career before I went into motherhood. I traveled the world. I saw everything. So when I went and decided to have children, I didn't feel like I was missing anything, right? I felt like I had lived life. So I would say, do it on your own time. I would say this time around, I would have a village. I would have so much support. And I realized a village requires funding, money to be able to do that. So that's something you also need to consider. If you want to have a child and in a more intentional way that aligns with you and what you need and your values, you definitely have to have a lot of resources there, a lot of support, a village. Like I would definitely have a home birth. I would definitely make it way more intentional. Things that I did do both times that I would do again is that I was like in the best shape physically, health-wise of my life, which to me made my transition into motherhood easier, my birth easier. It made me like getting back to my old size, getting back, that physical part of my life. It was easier because I And that was also very intentional. Like, I was very mindful of my diet, my health. I was working out a lot. Like, I was really, really nourishing and taking care of yourself. And that's important when you are growing a human inside of you. Also, I did a lot of yoga. I did a lot of like meditation, breath work. Like, my second pregnancy, it was like, and my son's name is Zen. And I swear he is like, he lives up to his name. I swear. And my daughter too. My daughter is such a beautiful, like, she's an artist. She's an athlete. She's commissioned her work. She has like this royal energy. I have some like beautiful star seeds. So I can truly say, like, they bring, I think one of my purposes here on earth is to be a divine mother, not only to my children, but to my clients as well. I think that I play that role for so many, not play that role, but I embody that divine mother energy for a lot of people. And I think that's the Cancer in me. I feel like that. And I feel like that is a part of my life's purpose, is to be this divine mother and the protector of starseeds.
I love that so much. And I love that you shared like what you did in both pregnancies that you would do again. So to bring this conversation to a close, I think this is a perfect question to ask because this conversation, I feel like everything that we touched on just reflected alchemy in some way, shape, or form. And I just want to leave listeners with a more expanded perspective of what alchemy looks like, how you practice it. And one of them being, as we mentioned in this conversation, is shifting your perspective. Is so huge, so essential. Gratitude does that for me. Gratitude allows me to shift my perspective, to bring forth clarity, to bring myself back to the present, to acknowledge my blessings. Practicing acceptance, that's an alchemy, accepting yourself, accepting your shadow. But also there's like the tangible tools like yoga and cards and crystals. So tell us what some of your favorite tools of alchemy are.
Okay, yeah. I would like to say this too, before I get into the tools. I was thinking, I use this metaphor a lot because it speaks to both of my worlds. So I am an intuitive jeweler. Like, I work with diamonds straight from the mine in their rawest form. And then here I am as a healer. I work with clients in their rawest form, right? So if you can think about a diamond in its unpolished state, it just looks like a rock. It looks like a pebble, like an unpolished stone diamond that we put so much value on, looks like a regular old rock before it goes through the process of refinement. And if you think about us and our darkest, rawest, most vulnerable, our shadow, that shadow, I keep going back to the shadow because in our shadow, that's where we're our most raw, vulnerable state, right? And that's where I'm usually getting my clients. I'm taking them into the shadow. I'm seeing them in this version of themselves. So you take a diamond and a person in their rawest form, and then they start to get refined. And like when I'm going through this process of creating a diamond, it goes through the process of like cutting, right? Of cutting, curating, grading it. And then you get to the final process, which is like the polishing, right? The polishing. And it's like the person who is going through their awakening, and they start in this like cocoon of healing and of like refining, right? Refining, of transmuting. and just pulling all away the things that's no longer needed, right? And the process of the diamond. And then you get to the end when you're about to come out of your cocoon into this rebirth and this awakening, and you come out as this brand new human, this lighter, wiser, freer, like more at peace, where this diamond now is polished and it's shining and it's reflecting all the prisms and the light, and it's beautiful. And so I'd say that to say is like, we all start in this raw, ugly form. And that's like what alchemy is. It's turning that pain into power. It's turning the shadow into light. It's the pressure that makes the diamond. The diamond is unbreakable. And that's what we are, babe. I'm unbreakable. I'm unbreakable like a diamond. Mm-hmm. And so I use that like, because to me, like that represents like true alchemy. And some of my tools besides that are my breath work, are my daily rituals, going within. I meditate a lot because in my meditation, I can go deeper into the crevices of my soul, of my brain, the subconscious state. I can go down and reprogram my subconscious. And there's so many things, there's so many gifts, there's so many messages for you when you close your eyes and go within. So the breath work is life-changing. Meditation is life-changing. Crystals are tools. My name is Crystal. My birth name is Crystal. Like I was named Crystal. And I think that is because my ability to, like a crystal does. What does a crystal do? You take the crystal, pulls all the darkness out, takes it in and gives it back as light. And each crystal has its own healing property, right? So crystals, but you have to do what resonates for you. I will tell you this, what I don't think you can skip is meditation. Mm-hmm. Going within is where the gold is. Breath work, using your own breath will take you deeper to deeper places you never thought you would ever go. And you can do this yourself. I always say, you are your own healer. I'm just a guide. But we can all heal ourselves. We all have the ability to heal ourselves. You do not need anyone to heal you. You can do it yourself.
Yes. And honestly, I would say that the best person to heal ourselves is our own self.
Yes. 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 All parts of ourselves. This is when healing comes, when your whole present self, you go like, when I knew I was healed, when I really knew like parts of me were here, especially my inner child, I don't go in my past anymore. I bring her to me. And when I'm triggered, I say, baby, what do you need? Tell me more. What's going on? And in my whole perfect state, I give her what she needs. And then when my whole present self needs support, my higher self comes in and says, Crystal, what's up, girl? How can I serve you today? Like, what's going on? So there are all these versions of ourselves for different reasons, for different purposes, but we have to learn how to rely and utilize ourselves. That is the gold. Us. You are the gold. Jocelyn, you are the gold.
Thank you. And truly, I pray that everyone listening to this really fully receives this and feels empowered by these words and this whole conversation. It was so expansive. We touched on so much, and I really appreciate you and your time and your energy. And definitely proud of you for all that you've alchemized and transmuted in your life. So you're so worthy of all the beauty that you're surrounded with and that you're going to continue to experience.
Oh, thank you. I received that and I'm reflecting it back to you.
Thank you. Before I let you go, I want to hold space for you in the case that there's anything that you feel called to share. I know you have an upcoming retreat
Oh, yeah.
So just want to hold space for that before I let
I
you go.
appreciate that. Yes, I am. This has been like 3-year planning. I it's so crazy. It's the one thing. Um, it has been my hardest thing to ever launch in my life. So I'm like, this has got to be good. But here I am, finally. I am launching the Rebirth Retreat. I'm launching in January. The Rebirth Retreat will be this summer in July 2023. You will come, you are coming to die and be reborn. I will be there as the divine mother holding space for you in what I call utopia. Bali literally is heaven on earth. It's the most highest vibrational place I've ever stepped foot on. From the culture, the Balinese people, they give blessings and offerings to their land multiple times a day. They give blessings to their ancestors and their spirit. And I swear you can feel the difference in the culture, the food, the people. They don't steal there. Like, it's such a beautiful, magical place. And I know that in my experience there, I want to bring my tribe there, and I want them to experience a rebirth to the highest magnitude in this place. So this is going to happen in the summer of 2023, and I'll be launching it in January on my website, crystalstreets.com, or you can follow me at Crystal Streets on Instagram.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
On that manifestation. It sounds so beautiful. And all the links to Crystal's site and pages and all that will be in the description below. So
yes. And if you'd like to work with me one-on-one, you can reach out to me directly via email. All my offerings are on my site. I have in-person and virtual offerings for everyone.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Crystal. Thank you so much. I'm excited to share this.
Yes. Thank you.